Why do so many people in the United Kingdom feel poorer every year, even though the country is still one of the largest economies in the world? If we look at the numbers, Britain is not a poor country. Its GDP per capita is still around $61,000 a year, based on IMF data for 2026. But these figures do not reflect the real situation experienced by ordinary people. Many, from regular workers to the middle class, feel that their purchasing power has become smaller compared to 20 years ago. As a result, even though the economy looks large on paper, daily life has become increasingly difficult for many citizens. So what is actually happening to Britain? In this video, we will look at why Britain appears to be moving forward, while the lives of its people are not truly improving. Stay tuned. Many workers in the United Kingdom have not seen significant improvements in their lives despite working for many years. Since the 2008 global financial crisis, real wages, meaning wages after inflation, have barely changed. Research from Oxford Academic shows that Britain has experienced the longest wage stagnation period in more than half a century. For example, in 2007, the median weekly wage was around £656. By 2023, that figure had increased by only about £11. After more than 15 years, this increase has had little impact on purchasing power. This situation becomes even clearer when compared with other developed countries. Based on analysis using data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the UK recorded one of the sharpest declines in wage growth after 2008. Other developed countries also experienced slowdowns, but averaged around 0.8% annual growth, while the UK recorded a decline of around 2.4% per year. This shows that Britain is not simply growing slowly. It is increasingly falling behind countries that were once at a similar level. But the question is, why have wages struggled to rise? The answer is closely tied to productivity. In economics, when workers produce more value per hour, employers have more room to pay higher wages. But if productivity does not increase, wages tend to remain stagnant. And this is where the United Kingdom faces a major problem. According to the Resolution Foundation, UK productivity, measured by economic output per hour worked, actually fell by around 0.5% between 2019 and 2024. Among G7 countries, only the UK and Italy showed weak performance during this period, with GDP per hour growth of around 0.6% annually. Meanwhile, the United States recorded much stronger productivity growth since 2019, driven by major investments in technology and automation. So why is productivity in Britain relatively weak? The reason is not just one factor, but a combination of several issues. First, business investment in Britain is lower compared to many other developed nations. Many companies invest less in technology, machinery, and worker training. Second, the country's education and vocational training systems are not aligned with current industry demands. As a result, many workers do not possess the skills required by the modern labor market. Third, public infrastructure, especially outside London, has fallen behind and no longer adequately supports modern economic activity. As a result, even though British workers continue working hard, the value they produce per hour remains lower than in countries such as Germany, France, and Australia. One of the biggest and most controversial decisions in modern British economic history was Brexit. In 2016, the United Kingdom held a highly divisive referendum, and a majority voted to leave the European Union. This decision was driven by several major promises, such as tighter border control, cost savings supposedly redirected to public healthcare, like the NHS, and hopes of restoring Britain's economic strength. However, nearly a decade later, available data shows a different outcome. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research estimates that Brexit reduced Britain's GDP by between 6% and 8% compared to if the country had remained in the EU. At the same time, business investment fell by between 12% and 18%. Employment declined by around 3% to 4%, and productivity also weakened by a similar margin. On average, every British citizen is estimated to have lost between £2,700 and £3,700 in income compared to a no Brexit scenario. While the economy struggles to grow and wages remain stagnant, the issue most directly felt by people in the United Kingdom is rising taxation. The BBC reported that Britain's tax burden is now at its highest level in more than 70 years. One major factor is the freezing of income tax thresholds. This means that even though wages rise slightly to keep up with inflation, tax brackets are not adjusted accordingly. As a result, many people are forced to pay higher taxes, even though their real purchasing power has not actually improved. In 2025, Chancellor Rachel Reeves announced additional taxes worth around £26 billion annually. This pushed Britain's tax burden to one of its highest levels since the end of World War II. In addition, one of the clearest signs of why the United Kingdom feels increasingly poor can be seen in housing prices. In 2025, the median house price in England was around £300,000, estimated to be about 7.6 times the annual income of a full-time worker. In London, this ratio was even higher, reaching 10.6 times annual income. This means that an average worker would need to work for many years just to save for a house deposit, assuming they are even able to save consistently. According to the Center for Policy Studies, Britain is currently facing a shortage of around 6.5 million housing units. Overall, the country has only about 446 housing units per 1,000 people, among the lowest levels in Europe. The biggest impact is felt by younger generations, who are forced to rent for longer periods, pay increasingly high rents, and at the same time struggle to save money. This cost of living pressure not only affects their ability to own homes, but also impacts their overall quality of life. This situation becomes even clearer when looking at the country's public healthcare system, the National Health Service, NHS. Established in 1948 as a commitment to provide free healthcare to all citizens, the NHS is now under growing pressure. Public satisfaction fell to around 52% in 2023, compared to 70% in 2010, according to the King's Fund. At the same time, more than 7 million people are currently on waiting lists for treatment. In emergency departments, cases of patients waiting more than 12 hours have also risen significantly. The roots of this problem can be traced back to the aftermath of the 2008 global financial crisis, when the government implemented austerity measures. Public spending was reduced, including in the healthcare sector. Throughout the 2000s and 10s, NHS budget growth slowed to around 1.5% annually, far below actual needs, especially with an aging population. In addition, the decision to reduce nurse training programs in 2011 created workforce shortages that are still being felt today. As a result, many people in the United Kingdom are unable to receive treatment on time, become less healthy, less productive, and eventually depend on private healthcare that not everyone can afford. This prolonged pressure is not only affecting institutions, but also shaping the life decisions of younger generations. One of the most worrying statistics in this picture is that increasing numbers of young people in the United Kingdom are choosing to leave the country altogether. According to the Office for National Statistics, around 257,000 citizens left the UK in 2024, far higher than the earlier estimate of around 77,000. Of that number, approximately 130,000 to 140,000 were young adults between the ages of 20 and 29. They are migrating to countries such as Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and cities like Dubai, which offer better job opportunities, more manageable living costs, or lower tax burdens. This phenomenon is known as brain drain, when young, skilled, and highly capable workers leave their home country. The long-term impact of this situation is enormous. The economy loses the very people who are supposed to become key contributors to taxes, innovation, and future growth. At the same time, these losses make economic recovery even more difficult. Finally, it is important to understand that the United Kingdom did not reach this point overnight. It is the result of accumulated pressures and decisions over many years. Even so, room for recovery still exists, but it will require major structural reforms. Without these changes, Britain risks remaining a large economy on paper, while the quality of life for its people continues to decline in reality.